After going over all the Fire Emblem protagonists' war crimes in my last video, the next logical step was to cover the antagonists. Before we start on that though, I just wanted to go over a couple of things that were brought up a lot in the comments section. The first thing that people brought up a lot was my categorization of compelling people to fight against their home country. Now, I'll just flat out admit that I was wrong here. I didn't realize that compel had such a strong connotation. That said, I still think it does apply to a fair few of those characters. Cases like Lorenz, for example, don't really have much of a choice in the matter. It's either join or die. There were still plenty in this section that I got wrong, and the comments made sure to correct me on that, so if you want a full list, go just scroll through the comments on that video. One thing that I just flat out forgot about was Roy in the final tally alongside Revelation Coring. They both got 13 alongside Erica, Ephraim, and Robin. Finally, there were a number of people who were under the impression that the Geneva Conventions don't exist in the Fire Emblem universe, and I can't fault them for misunderstanding. After all, Navala explicitly states so in Chapter 6 of Fire Emblem the Sacred Stones. However, many people actually have overlooked the fact that if you go into FE8's guide, you can clearly find the Geneva Conventions outlined. This, of course, I wouldn't put blame on anyone for. I didn't read the tutorials when I first started playing Fire Emblem either. In fact, my first experience with Fire Emblem was playing Fire Emblem 4 in Japanese on my official Nintendo PC and getting everyone but Sigurd killed. Anyway, those were the biggest things I wanted to get out of the way. There's still plenty of amazing information in the comments section, so I totally recommend checking it out. I also just want to thank everyone so much who watched that video and is watching this video and liked and subscribed to my channel. I was not expecting such a massively positive reception to the video, and it blew up my channel way more than I was expecting it to. My subscriber count has already quadrupled since I posted it, which is crazy. That all out of the way, we can finally move on to the subject of today's video. Compared to the protagonist's one, this video will be laid out a little bit differently. Due to the numerous enemy factions, I've decided for most games to limit the representatives on this list to one faction. If I didn't, there would just be too much to go over on this list. The Three Houses Lords and Rhea, of course, are an exception to this, as I will be counting each of them. Finally, as one comment suggested, I'll be going through this video faction by faction rather than crime by crime. One thing that I unfortunately had to do for this list was change how things were counted a bit. Unlike the protagonists, whose whole journeys we see lay out before us, the enemies are a lot less documented. We see parts of their greater actions, but our forces as the player are often fighting against a fraction of what's out there. It would be impossible, for example, to calculate the number of children sacrificed to Loptier because 99% of that happens off-screen. Due to all that, I will be going through the Geneva checklist, giving a point to each antagonist for each war crime they have committed at least once. I won't be taking into account multiples. That lengthy intro out of the way, we can now begin. To my surprise, Claude actually never committed any war crimes as an enemy. To be fair, he really isn't present that much in the non-Verdant Wind routes due to his goals outside of Fodlan. This was a very lucky break for him, as I'm sure if he had more than 10 minutes of screen time in the other routes, he would be at the top of this list. While on Three Houses, there was something I did want to mention real quick, which is the nature of the hero relics. While one could make the case that these are homemade weapons, I won't be counting them as they were crafted very long ago and are widely recognized as legitimate weaponry. Dimitri is another case that I was surprised to see so low. After all, he has that famous kill every last one of them line in every route. Of course, that means his first war crime is declaring no quarter will be given. His next crime comes in his escape from Ferdiad, where he killed some people and stole some stuff. His final war crime comes in Crimson Flower, where he makes use of demonic beasts. Now, I am aware that the use of demonic beasts, necromancy, and mind control aren't outlined in the Geneva Conventions, even though they really should be. I, however, decided that they should be anyway. I shall dub this new war crime the use of the dark arts. Next up we have Sombron, the main antagonist of the most recent Fire Emblem game. The first war crime I wanted to discuss was attacking unarmed medical personnel. Now, this is a weird one to cover in consideration of the enemy, so I'm going to go and explain it a little bit. Since the actions of the enemy units are largely dictated by the player's action, it's very difficult to actually calculate this for most enemies. For most games, I've just decided to check off this box if the antagonist's forces encountered you before you would reasonably be able to promote your healers and arm them. For Three Houses, as we just discussed, I won't be counting it as, by part 2, you should have all your healers equipped with at least some weapon. That all out of the way, we can move on to Sombron's next war crime, which is the appropriation of property. This guy really likes stealing jewelry. Just like his child, Sombron employs the use of daggers, which are poisonous weapons. Finally, he is engaged in the dark arts, having created many zombies. Moving on to Hoshido, they do actually have a fair few war crimes. First, of course, just like Korin, Hayato is a soldier of the Wind Tribe, and a child soldier. In addition to this, Hoshido took Azura hostage in an attempt to get back Korin, and when that failed, they kept her hostage. Of course, Hoshido also gets the generic enemy AI attacking healers, which is a war crime. Their final war crime comes in their use of status saves, and I just want to shout out that damn hexing rod and how annoying it is. Our next war criminal is Gangrel from Awakening. Like Hoshido, he also took a hostage in Emerin, though his attempt was much more effective. For his other two war crimes, they come in the use of his dark arts, particularly necromancy, as well as his declaration of no quarter. This is the first of a few antagonists where I've grouped multiple parties into one faction. In this case, we have Alvis and Manfroy due to their alliance. Their total war crimes in Gen 1 will be added together, and the total's actually a lot lower than I would have expected. Alvis's first war crime comes in his use of status saves at Fenora Castle. Manfroy employs the dark arts, brainwashing Deirdre. Finally, their last two war crimes come in the Battle of Belhalla, where Alvis commits both perfidy by pretending to be a neutral nation, as well as declaring no quarter will be given with this attack on Sigurd's army. At the very least, he doesn't have to worry about attacking unarmed medics, since all your characters will be promoted by this time. Now, Rhea's placement on this list might be a little bit controversial, but I decided not to count a bunch of her war crimes from way before the events of the game. I will be counting the blood experiments since they're pretty recent and still ongoing, and also pretty relevant to the Silver Snow route with the White Beasts. In addition to this, Rhea executes members of the Western Church without a trial. Then her final two war crimes come in the final chapter of Crimson Flower, during which she sets fire to Ferdiad. This is both the destruction of property as well as using a plan of attack knowing it will cause incidental life loss or damage to the environment. I'm sure she'd have racked up a lot more war crimes if Crimson Flower was a bit longer like the other routes, but since that's not the case, she remains at 4. Zephiel and Bern, like many other antagonists, have one big action that checks off most of their war crimes. For him, it's his invasion of Sakai. During that attack, a number of civilians were killed, and in addition to that, no quarter was given. His next war crime comes in the generic GBA Fire Emblem AI attacking unarmed medics. His forces also employ status saves. Finally, as one comment pointed out to me, in FE6 and 7, dark magic actually destroys the soul of its target, and if that doesn't count as a legal weapon, I don't know what does. Garneth and Medius in Book 1 have a solid tally going for them. Garneth employs the dark arts, using it to brainwash Tiki and compel her into service for a solid 2 for 1. He's also the commander-in-chief of Dolor, under which Dejanira holds Horus's people hostage, as well as compelling him into service. After all that, their final war crime comes in when either Medius himself or one of their minions captures and tortures Camus. Tied with his past self, this time including hardened into schemes, Garneth once again uses mind control, this time on 4 unarmed clerics to sacrifice them to Medius. Honestly though, most of Harden's war crimes could have been avoided if Lang wasn't part of the Arcanaean army. That man is responsible for a number of heinous acts, including attacking civilians, destroying and pillaging property, as well as capturing and enslaving women, which I won't go into any further. Moving on from FE3, we now go into Shadows of Valentia with Duma and Rudolf. We have our next case here of using child soldiers, as Delphia is not only 14, but was also kidnapped and turned into a witch. While my research didn't yield anything on sacrificing people's souls to degenerated dragons, I opted to count witches as the use of the dark arts. It's also worth noting that her village was attacked in her capture, so she alone scores the Regalians 3 war crimes. In addition to this, they use poisoned weapons. Finally, in Act 3, Almanselka thwart their attempt to flood Zofia with the sluice gates, a plan that would have caused massive incidental life loss and environmental damage. Moving on, we reach the war criminal everyone's been waiting for, Edelgard. In addition to herself, I've decided to combine her with those who slither in the dark due to their alliance. During part 1, those who slither in the dark capture Flame to perform blood experiments, and since it's optimal to wait until the end of the month to save her, they definitely got away with something. Even if you don't want to count that, she's still guilty of attacking civilians as she hired Kostas to kill some of the students from the Officers' Academy. On top of that, those who slither in the dark caused massive destruction to Ramir Village during Act 1, and while you could argue that she's not responsible as she explicitly states that she didn't agree with the action, the fact still stands that she continues to work with them for years to come. Another war crime by those who slither in the dark was the use of nuclear weapons. They're launched at Fort Mercius, having a massive effect on the surrounding environment, and not only that, but they're another type of weapon that was outlawed by the Geneva Convention. For more attacks relating to Edelgard specifically, she sets fire to a structure in Gronder Field, and makes no attempt to put out the fire after the chapter ends. For her final war crime, she employs the use of demonic beasts, which need no explanation. Due to a lot of duplicates between her and those who slither in the dark, she ends up with a solid total of 5. Moving back to the GBA era, we have Nurgle from Fire Emblem 7. Did you know Fire Emblem 7 is the first Fire Emblem game released in the West, known just as Fire Emblem? In our first FE game here, we see Nurgle and the Black Fang commit a number of war crimes. Of course, Nino is a member of the group, meaning they are using child soldiers. Additionally, the group attacks Zephiel in the infamous Battle Before Dawn, who is a civilian. Just like in FE6, dark magic in this universe destroys the souls, so I'll be counting that. He didn't really need to count that anyway, since Nohr was already using people's souls and quintessence and stuff to make morphs. That I just decided to count as dark arts and leave the dark magic as illegal weapons. Moving on, we go to the Loptir Empire in Gen 2 of FE4. While the Empire's crimes are widespread and numerous, due to how I had to format this list, they do place a bit lower than I would have expected. Since both FE4 and FE5 feature them, they will appear on this list twice, and I will be counting those instances separately, but for now we're just going to focus on FE4. The thing that I'm sure jumps to mind first when talking about Loptir is the child hunts. These of course count as attacks on the civilian population, but not only that, the children who aren't sacrificed to Loptir are then converted into dark priests who we fight throughout the game. Therefore, this counts as compelling prisoners of war into service as well. Those dark priests of course are all equipped with a variety of status staves. Thracia, a state under the Empire's rule, also captures Hannibal's son and holds him hostage. Finally, Loptir employs the dark arts, reanimating the corpses of the 12 Crusaders as the 12 Dreadlords, bringing the total for FE4 to 6 war crimes. Ashnard is unsurprisingly pretty high on this list. Of course, he has the generic AI attacking unarmed medics. A house in Chapter 11 also confirms that Daein has been attacking civilians of Crimea. Additionally, in Chapter 10 you encounter a prison and set free a number of prisoners who were set to be executed without a trial. His 4th war crime comes in his use of poisoned weapons. Izuka presents Daein's use of the dark arts using concoctions to create feral lagoos. That in itself is bad enough, but Ashnard attacks Rajayan's personal dignity, using him as a mount. Fates' writing is comedically bad, just like Nohr. They start off strong, deploying Elise, who is a child soldier. On top of that, Nohr compels the Ice Tribe into military service, forcing them to fight Khorne or be killed. Of course, this being Nohr, there's no shortage of cartoonishly evil acts, including multiple declarations of no quarter, attacking and killing civilians, attacking combatants who have laid down arms, and killing prisoners of war without a trial. For Nohr's final war crime, they have the Faceless. Yeah, that brings them to a total of 8 war crimes. Now, the Sacred Stones was not a game I was expecting to have this high on the list. While they do employ necromancy and status saves, FE8 feels pretty chill compared to most Fire Emblem games, all things considered. I could not have been more wrong, though. Amelia starts off strong as a child soldier, and of course we have the GBA AI, which will attack medics. Novala also takes hostages in order to get Erika to surrender, and even if he doesn't know about the Geneva Convention, ignorance is no excuse for war crimes. So that brings us to 5. Why is Grotto so high on this list? Well, the Phantom Ship is a massive violation of the Geneva Convention. It's basically an uncontrollable death machine they set loose in the waters surrounding their country. The ship regularly attacks civilian ships, sinking them, which is already a 2-in-1, and on top of that, Grotto deployed the ship knowing it would cause incidental loss of life. That means that the Phantom Ship alone has the same number of war crimes as Dimitri and Claude combined. Thracia 776. Not just a fitting name for the year it takes place, but how many war crimes occur throughout its events. The Loptir Empire starts off strong here, compelling Xavier and the Leonster soldiers, as well as Connemar and the Elster soldiers into service. They hold Marita and Nana hostage, forcing Avel to come and get turned to stone. On top of that, they are still conducting the child hunts as mentioned before. The forces of Loptir also employ the use of the dark arts and their use of the Dreadlords, as well as a lot of status staves. Kempf is also guilty of attempting to execute a prisoner with war without a trial, leaving Olwyn and a number of others to die at the hands of his forces in 11X. Finally, the Empire scores their 7th and 8th war crimes in the Siege of Tara. Not only was this attack launched without regard to the incidental damage and life loss it would cause, but the invading forces actively destroyed the town in an attempt to capture Leaf. Finally, we reach the top, the pinnacle of war criminals, the Begnion Senate from FE10. For starters, they force Peleus into a blood pact, effectively compelling him into their service. Laverton under the Begnion Senate holds a number of people hostage. Misaya's assassination alone counts as killing of civilians as well. Jared's another big war criminal under the Senate, leading an attack on Daein Keep Castletown. On top of all this, the occupying forces attempt to execute a number of prisoners of war without a trial in Chapter 8, for example. Before the game begins even, the Senate was responsible for the Serenus massacre, in which the Serenus forest was burned down. Finally, the Senate was working with Izuka, who we all remember was the war criminal responsible for the creation of feral lagoos. With all that, they total to 8 war crimes, bringing us to the end of our list. Just like in part 1, I'm sure I've missed a couple of things. It would have been impossible for me to find everything in my research of the series. As always, feel free to point out things and correct me in the comments section below. That said, I really do appreciate you all for watching to the end of this video. I shall now engage in cringe YouTuber behavior. Please subscribe to my channel. I'm almost to the point where I can monetize my channel and I really want to. Thank you.